Okay, so we are on part two of the first unit of financial instruments and derivatives, which is capital and money market. This is the chapter that we are into right now. Today's coverage of the chapter would be basically about capital market, a recap on that. We are going to see the capital market functions. Later in the chapter, we are going to see the capital market, that is the secondary markets, how certain trading procedures happen in a stock exchange. And then we are going to see something about on primary markets. So this is the overall flow of the chapter. Now let's move on to get dig into a recap of capital markets. So we have studied about how important the segment of capital market is in the Indian financial system. This market basically talks on the requirements of long-term funds. It also refers to all the facilities and the institutional arrangements for either borrowing or lending of funds. It is more probable from the earlier statements that it is dealing into long-term investment and long-term funds. So raising of capital for the purpose of making a long-term investment or for expansion purpose, anything which is raised for long-term purpose by either the corporates or the government would be coming from this market. Next is it consists of a number of individuals and institutions. As I've spoken earlier, it can include the government as well. And this system, why it includes the institutions or individuals, is just to channelize the supply of funds to the demand side of the to the demand side. Now, a demand for long-term capital generally comes up from the private sector, manufacturing industries, agricultural sector, or a trade, if anything is happening, or from government agencies, maybe for various purposes like to build up infrastructure facilities within the country, or uh, reasons like that. Now, as we have spoken about the demand, similarly, there has to be a supply to fulfill that demand. So, supply of funds from the capital market comes largely from the individuals, corporate savings, insurance savings, banks, specialized financial agencies, and surplus of government. So, this is overall recap of the capital market. Now, let's understand the functions of capital market. So a capital market is a linking factor, and it tries to link or bridge a gap between the investors and savers. It tries to move the capital from one place to another. Now, why this movement of capital is happening? Because we expect that in a country, the capital flow should be such that it should be profitable and as well as productive as well. Okay, so why it has to be profitable and why it has to be productive enough? Because it will again boost the national income. So this is a reason why capital market should function efficiently within a country. Now, with a boost in national income, again, it will also try to boost the economic growth within the country. As in, people will, there are investors, as I said, and these investors invest their money into certain sectors. Okay, now these sectors getting a good amount of capital, they may start their expansions, or they may pump in more money to manufacture more products and again to sell these products in the market. So this overall cycle will give a boost to the economy. The next is about mobilization of savings to finance long-term investments. So generally, people have a habit in any market of saving. Okay, so savers generally they try to invest in those sectors or those instruments wherein the savings could be mobilized towards a long-term tenure. Next is it will also capital market facilitates trading of securities. So you could see equity shares traded in the market. You could see other instruments as well traded in the capital market. So its function is also to trade number of securities that are present in the market. It also tries to minimize the transaction and information costs. So this basically talks about because everything has become like all the transactions are so quick and so efficient enough because of internet facilities and whatever e-trading is concerned. So this has reduced transaction costs and also information costs. It also encourages a massive range of ownership of productive assets. So if somebody is purchasing a share of a particular company, naturally he or she becomes the owner of the company. Again, it is limited to the number of shares a person or the investor has invested into. And these investments basically again are taken up by the body corporates, and they try to utilize this money into certain assets which are productive enough. Another function of a capital market is to quickly value any financial instrument. So if you are into a e-trading scenario, you could understand that any instrument quickly, how frequently it changes its prices, could be grabbed from the capital markets. Now, another thing it does is through the derivative trading, it offers insurance against market or price threats. So, derivative trading is a little bit riskier version of trading of certain derivatives inside the capital market. Again, it will offer certain, a capital market ensures that certain people who are trading into the market are secured by giving certain style of insurance. The next is it will try to facilitate transaction settlement. So as I said earlier, trading happens in a capital market, buying and selling happens. Similarly, there has to be some transaction settlement. So capital market ensures that these settlements are done within the market. The next is it tries to improve the effectiveness of capital allocation. Now, how well the capital has been allocated in various way, or what are the different ways of allocating the capital, and whether it is effective or not, how it could be improved as far as certain companies are concerned or certain um, corporates are concerned which are active on the capital market. These functions are also carried out by the capital market. And last but not the least is they try to make available the funds uh, to all those who require in the capital markets on a continuous basis. So there is no intermittent flows, but there is a continuous availability of funds, and these continuous availability of funds makes the fund flow in a great good manner within the uh, within the market as well as within the economy. So this is about capital market functions. Moving on, let's understand capital market, the various trading procedures in stock exchange. Now, before I head on to make you understand how trading happens in stock exchanges, uh, let me first talk on there are two important classifications of a capital market. So the first segment is a secondary primary market, and another one is a secondary market. So stock exchanges generally become a part of the secondary markets, okay? And we are going to see how the secondary markets, rather, which is a portion of a capital market, how trading procedures happen in the stock exchanges. So earlier, if you could see this picture, earlier at BSE or any other stock exchange, the method was of floor trading. So you could see over here a number of people are there in the exchange. There is a board over here which shows certain things written in red. These are prices of various stocks, and people will try to negotiate with each other. So you could see over here people writing certain prices on the sheets, and there are people who are bargaining over here or negotiating on the price with the said broker. So this was a way trading used to happen in earlier times, and now it has completely changed in the sense that it has become more of electronic trading. So nowhere now people don't do floor trading. You won't see people shouting and asking for bargain or bargaining a particular price. You won't see too much clutter of people in a particular place. So everything has been uh, changed over a period of time, and electronic trading has become a key right now, which is accepted by all the stock exchanges in India. So this is how over a period of time changes have been brought in the way the trading used to be done earlier to the trading which is now taken up in a e-version. Okay, now let's understand the trading procedures in exchanges, how it happens. So there are five steps that I've written over here. Firstly, for any investor, he has to first select a broker, then opening of a demat account with depository, placing the order, executing the order, and settlement of the order. So this is how it flows. How let's see how it happens step by step. So the first thing I said was you have to select a particular broker. Now, buying and selling of securities can only be done through SEBI registered brokers. So, anybody who is not registered with SEBI can't trade in the stock exchange. So, a registered broker is allowed, and he or the broker should be a member of the stock exchange. The broker can be an individual, partnership firm, or a corporate body also. So like we are aware about Zerodha, we are aware about Sher Khan, or for that instance even Bonanza. So these are all partnership firms, or some of them are also corporate bodies which trade into the stock exchange. So the first step over here is to select the broker who will buy or sell securities on behalf of the investor or an speculator. So after a investor has selected a broker, the second step is about opening a demat account with a depository. Now, what is demat? The full form of demat is dematerialized, and it is an account which refers to an account an Indian citizen must open with the depository participant or a bank or a stockbroker. And why he has to open? Because he has to, if he is interested to trade in the securities in an electronic form, then it is a mandatory thing that he has to go for a demat account. Now, the second step is very important. Similarly, when I started with a broker, you have to select a broker. Similarly, it's very important that if e-trading has to be done, then it's a compulsion that on every investor that he or she should have a demat account with any of the depository the person likes. Okay, so it's not a compulsion that XYZ bank has to be a depository. You can select any bank which is getting into this or making you available the demat account. The next now, as I said earlier, there could be you could open a demat account with a depository. Okay, now there are what is a depository? So depository is an institution or an organization which holds an investor's security. So supposedly I have brought shares of Reliance Industries, or I have bought shares of HDFC, and I hold an account with Zerodha or ICICI Bank. So in that case, Zerodha becomes a depository, or ICICI becomes a depository for my shares. These depositories will hold my securities. It is similar to the way we are having a savings account with a bank. So the bank becomes a depository, and we are the bank is holding cash of ours or money of ours into our respective accounts. So what can be held in the depository? So you can the depository can hold your shares, debentures, bonds, mutual funds, etc. in the depository. Now at present in India there are two major depositories, that is NCDL and CDSL, that is National Securities Depository Limited and Central Depository Services Limited. So all these banks generally they hold their accounts with either NSDL or CDSL. This is about depository. Now there is no direct contact between the depository and investor as such. You may have an account with the bank, and bank subsequently has an account with either NSDL or CDSL. So a depository never it would try to interact directly with the participant, and it would interact with the investor only uh, when it provides certain contract notes, or maybe certain it wants to convey certain status holding to the investor. Only during that time the depository will contact the investor. So this is how a depository works, and an investor is in connective, how he or she is connected with the depository. Next step or procedure to get into trading is placing the order. After opening the demat account, the investor now has a right or can place the order through his or her account. Now the order can be placed to the broker, either the DP, that is a depository, personally, or through a phone, email, etc. So if I'm interested, like if there are firms like Bonanza or Sher Khan, so I can directly talk with my broker saying that I want to purchase 100 shares of XYZ company, and through a phone call the order may be placed at such and such price. So I'm mentioning the price, I'm mentioning the share or company in which I'm interested, and then I'm specifying the quantity of shares. Similarly, if there is no such, or there is a e-trading platform like Zerodha, then directly you can place an order via your software, and you can place the order for a specified quantity at a specified amount. Now investor must place the order very clearly, because if he puts a wrong price or a wrong quantity, naturally this will affect the trade. Okay, so he has to be very careful on what kind of price range he wants for a particular security, and whether he wants to buy a security or sell a security. So he has to be clear on these terms. Now there is one example that I have quoted, like buy 100 equity shares of Reliance for not more than rupees 500 per share. So over here I have limited the price, and I have told my broker that the share price, when it is below 500 or 500, only then to place my order for 100 equity shares of Reliance, otherwise leave it. Okay, so that is how clearly our investor should specify what order, or what a buy order or sell order, what quantity and at what price, and which company for the investor is interested into. So this is about placing the order. The next step is about executing the order. Now, as per the instructions of the investor, the broker will try to execute the order. The broker will keep on checking whether the price is not above the specified amount, or it is within whatever has been given as specifications by the investor. Now, broker generally would prepare a contract note for the order executed. Now, what is a contract note? Basically, this note contains the name, the price of the security, the name of the parties who are involved, and the brokerage that is charged by the broker to the investor. So any commission charge, even that becomes a part of your contract note. Now, contract note is generally signed by the broker. If it's a electronic platform, there is no need of signing as such, but there is an electronic signature which is placed in the contract note. So once the order is executed, let's move on to understand the fifth and the last step of trading procedure in the stock exchange, and that is settlement. Now, settlement actually means the transfer of securities from one account to another account. Now, this is the last stage in trading of securities in a stock market, and generally done by the broker on behalf of their clients. If it is a e-platform, you could directly see the securities getting transferred in your account. Okay, so that is completely visible to you. But if it is a broker, the broker will get uh, or rather broker will be able to see first that it is into your in the account, and then he'll be able to tell you that this shares are purchased or settled or not. Now there are again two types of settlement. The first settlement is called as the on the spot settlement, and the second settlement is called as a forward settlement. Now let's understand what is on the spot and forward settlement. So on the spot settlement means settlement is done immediately and on the spot, that is whatever day has been decided. So on the spot settlement follows. So T+2, that is trading day, the day on which an investor has traded plus 2 days, becomes a rolling settlement. Now, this means any trade that takes place on Monday gets settled by Wednesday, provided Wednesday is not a public holiday or a holiday which is mentioned by government, or when stock exchanges are closed. So T+2 is called as an on-the-spot settlement. So if I purchase anything or if I try to sell anything in the market, then T+2, generally the rolling settlement, is acceptable in a stock exchange. The second type of settlement is called as a forward settlement. Now it means that settlement will take place on some future date. So it is not T+2 that follows. It may be T+5 or it may be T+7 also. So that becomes a forward settlement. So it is not an immediate settlement, but after a few days it would be settled, or accounts of the buyer and the seller would be settled. Now all trading in the stock exchange take place between 9:55 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. and it is from Monday to Friday. So every investor needs to take care about the trading timings and the days on which the stock exchanges are open. Next, we move to understand primary markets. In the earlier slides itself, I had mentioned that your capital market can be uh, subdivided under the categories of capital market, secondary market and primary markets. Now let's understand what is hidden in the primary market. So primary market is a new issue market, and this is a market where uh, it deals into issue of new securities to the investor, placing this new securities in front of the investor so that the investor would directly buy these from the companies which is trying to issue this issue this instrument. Now here the investors buy securities that were never traded before. So nothing has happened, no buy, no sell has happened earlier on this security. And as it is first time, the company is introducing the security to the investor. So it is the first time anything would be bought or sold of the said security. Now these securities are issued for the first time, and so as to raise capital. Now this is also called as initial public offering. So your new issue market or securities which are brought in first time are also called as IPOs. We are quite famous, and so the full form of this is initial public offering. Now companies like companies or government or public sector institutions can obtain funds through sale of a new stock or a bond issue through the primary markets. So anytime if any company or body corporate or government for that matter or public sector institutions like BHEL or any other one, companies, they are interested in raising capital, short-term capital through this, long-term capital through this primary market, and it is for a new stock or new bond, anything is issued, then in that case it would be called as a primary market. Now primary market creates new securities and offers them for sale to public. uh, it would be for the first time it would be sold in the market, and the issue can take a form of either a public issue, private placement, preferential issues, rights, and a bonus issue. So these are various forms of how issues could be placed in the primary market. Okay, so now a public issue, does it limit anyone? No, it doesn't limit anyone. So any individual, organization, or corporate can go and invest in a primary market. uh, the private placement part, as in the earlier slides I had told that there are different ways in which these new securities could be placed in the primary market. So one of them was private placement, and over here in the private placement only the issuance is done to a select number of people. So everybody can't purchase this private placement, otherwise other securities can be purchased by private by any or any number of individuals, or it doesn't limit anyone. Now allotment done to more than 200 people become a public allotment. Allotment done to less than 200 people becomes or is called as a private allotment. Now, since securities are directly issued by the companies to investors, the company directly receives all the funds, directly receives all the funds and all the money against that security which it has tried to sell to the investors. Okay. Now let's understand the different types of issue. The first issue is called as a public issue. Now, when a company tries to raise fund by selling its securities through an issue of the offer document, it would be called as a public issue. So there has to be some document which will specify why the company is raising the money, who all are involved in that raising of money, what is the share price of the money, how many shares the company is thinking of putting forward in front of the public. So all these things, when they are put in a document, that document is called as an offer document. And generally it happens with the public issue that any IPO or any FPO, if put, it has to be through the offer document. Okay, the company can't directly go and publicize saying that I am issuing a public issue. No, it doesn't happen that way. It has to generate an offer letter, issue offer document, put that in front of people which are specified, and then later on it can issue it to the public. Now there are again two categories of a public issue. The first is called as an IPO. We very well know it is an initial public offer. Now it is when a company tries to make a fresh issue of securities to the general public, and that too for the first time. So anything that happens for the first time, like a fresh issue and for the first time, and if the company is coming with that, it would be categorized under IPO, that is initial public offer. The second type is called as a FPO. FPO is an abbreviation for follow on public offer. Now what is this? This is a little bit different than IPO. Now it is when a public limited company, it is already in existence, okay, and listed on the exchanges, but it tries to issue some additional shares to the general public. That time it would be called as a follow on public offer. So there are conditions over here. The company should be a public limited company. Secondly, it should be already listed on the exchange. Thirdly, the shares that are issued to the general public, or it is thinking of issuing the shares to the general public, should be additional shares. So these are the three important aspects of an FPO. So it is a little bit different than an IPO. Moving on, let's understand the rights issue. So a rights issue is when a listed company makes an issue of fresh securities only to its existing shareholders. So if Reliance Industries has certain shareholders and a fresh security is opened up for only these existing shareholders, then it would be called as a rights issue. Then there is preferential issues. Now, these issues or securities are given only to a selected group of individuals, and this is to raise some additional funds by the organization. So, a typical selected group of individuals, and something done because the company wants some additional capital or additional funds. Only then a preferential issue is put forward by the company. Again, for preferential issue, it is mandatory even for rights issue that under both the heads, if you could see, I've written it has to be a listed company. Okay, only then they can have a rights issue or a preferential issue. The next is private placement. Now, when a wholesale issue of securities is done, then it is called as a private placement. Now, to whom this wholesale issue of securities is done, it is generally done to the institutional investors. Now, these are institutional investors who have a very large capacity to buy huge quantities of a security. So when a company tries to place or place an offer in front of these institutional investors, which are huge buyers, uh, then they would be called as they are doing a private placement of security. Okay, now there are certain important keywords of primary market. The first important keyword was offer document. As you could see, we have already talked about the offer document. It gives information in connection to the company. So it talks about company's promoters, projects that have been undertaken, financial conditions, the objective, why the company is trying to raise the money, Again, it would have a price, some number of shares that are being offered, even that is specified in the offer document. Then there is a price band. Now it is a range of price within which an investor can bid for security. So if there is a mention like for individual investors it is 350 to 450. So this is a range of price within which an individual investor has to bid for that particular IPO. Okay. Similarly, for institutional investors, this price band would change. So it is different for individuals and it is different for institutional investors. The next is of cutoff price. So this is a price that is decided by the issuer in consultation with the merchant banker. Now this price will tell you at which the securities will be offered to you. Okay, so that is called as a cutoff price. Then there is a floor price. It is a minimum price at which bids can be made for an IPO. So if I say the price range is 350 to 450 and if I keep the floor price as 350, so that becomes a minimum price. Without, if you bid at 250, I'm not going to give you that share. Okay, only if you bid 350 and above, only then I'll give you that share. Next is face value. Now it is a minimum value below which the prices of the stocks won't fall. Okay, so these are some important terminologies. Thank you very much for listening to the session.